Sure. So, good evening to all the doctors. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us at this hour of the day. I know म्हणजे बोलायचं झालं मराठी तर सगळेच मराठी आहेत म्हणून चर्चा कोविडची
मराठीतच
तर
बोला.
खूपच चर्चा
सागर
सगळीकडे
पण मराठीत
कोविडचीच
बोलणार
चालू
आहे.
आहेत.
येस येस.
आता कळावून मराठीत बोलणार आहे सागर.
मला कुठे इंग्लिश येतं.
मला शब्द नाही आठवलं तर आम्ही बोलू. सागर तुला
चालेल.
Yes,
Sir,
I'm sorry.
yeah, no problem, doctor. So, since we are all discussing about COVID and we know how really we are actually struggling or finding ways to mitigate this very intense or deadly situation, I think as one of you said that patients are dying on the road, hypoxia or many such illnesses. We see our relatives, we see our close friends or close acquaintances, or maybe our patients who are really suffering, and it's like a critical time. I think much more so like this disease, which is COVID. The other disease which join hands with it is influenza, or stands nearby it is influenza, who really has or which really has an equally pandemic causing potential. And we should really have our guards safe well against this disease, because more so we have been talking about this disease about a century or so, I think, since we have known this disease, and now we have evolved with the vaccine preventable solution too for this disease. But still, every time, though we discuss a lot about it, there are quite myths, facts, figures which dwell around this disease. And more so, every time we need some kind of refreshment or some kind of enlightenment, which we need to really help our decision making around offering this vaccine. More so, this vaccination is an annual ritual. So, how and when should we actually adapt to cater the seasonality aspect, or what is the right time to actually offer this vaccination to your patients? So, to understand more on these topics, which is influenza vaccination, we'll have a focused discussion around how is this disease in children. More so, though we know that the vaccination is for all. So what if a pediatrician really has to offer this vaccine to maybe adults who accompany, or the parents who accompany their children? So what is the perspective? We may want to really discuss with each one of you and have the prima facie understanding from our expert today, Dr. Sagar Warankar. Dr. Sagar Warankar needs no introduction in the region because he's a very well-known pediatrician. He has his experience and expertise for quite long years in the region. He is a known pediatric pulmonologist practicing currently, an allergist, sorry if I missed that. I'm practicing currently at Yevle Hospital and Jupiter Hospital. So Dr. Sagar, with your enriched experience and expertise, I really don't want to take any further time and stand between you and the audience. I hand over the virtual dice to you so that you enlighten us on this topic on influenza vaccination in children. More so, if you want to really add something on the adult perspective, and how do we really look at the seasonality with what is the right time to vaccinate? Dr. Sagar, over to you.
Thank you
I'm
so
sorry,
much.
just forgotten formality. On behalf of all of us, I would like to welcome our President, beloved President, Dr. Sunita Ingre, Vice President, Secretary, Mrs. Bhandarkar, and all office bearers. Thank you very much. Madam, never forget to welcome our President.
Yes, I'm so sorry for that. I'm so sorry, doctor. Thank you so much for really bringing that in.
एडिटर पण आहेत. एडिटर पण आहेत तिथे. एडिटर पण आहेत.
And I would also like to really acknowledge Dr. Niyaz Singh and Dr. Jai Bhandarkar, who has been quite instrumental in organizing this session. So thank you so much, all the doctors, and really it's a pleasure to have you all. Dr. Sagar, over to you.
Dr. Sagar, please.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Raigad IAP and my all senior pediatrician who is always helping me, and my colleagues for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of you regarding something which is near and dear topic like influenza infection in children, because this is very commonest which we see as a pediatric pulmonologist in our day-to-day practice. Mostly we see those who are getting admitted in ICUs or little bit sick children, not usual routine practice in my OPD in Panvel I see, but I see very bad cases of influenza getting admitted in ICUs also in different hospitals across the Mumbai. So I thanks Sanofi also for giving me this opportunity, and with this I'll start my session. So today's topic given to me is influenza vaccination in children and seasonality of influenza in India. So definitely nowadays we are going through very bad patch of our lifetime. Most of us are not seen such a devastating disease like corona COVID-19 in our lifetime, but in a 100 years back, if you see. So let's see what is the definition of influenza. By definition, if you see, it's acute febrile highly contagious respiratory infection characterized by sudden onset of fever that is more than 38 degrees centigrade and myalgia, which can cause hospital. So it is as similar as your COVID-19, and it can cause even death in children as well as in older people. So it's our most intimate enemy right now. So I will start with one case which I have seen recently, just March first week. This patient was referred to me from Surat by one of the senior pediatrician from there, and got admitted in SRC under me. This is 9-month-old, born to non-consensuous marriage, admitted with cold cough for 12 days, fever for 7 days, breathing difficulty for days. So initial presentation, there was only cold and cough, and there was no breathing difficulty or fever in initial 5 days. But later on day 5, he developed fever and breathing difficulty for last 2 days. So in view of that, the child was transferred from Surat for further management. This child past history was born to normal vaginal delivery, appropriate for gestational weight, and he was on breastfeeding until 6 months of age. But he has taken only national immunization according to national immunization program, not taken any extra vaccine like pneumococcal as well as flu vaccine. So this child came with very bad state and was ventilated in view of impending respiratory failure. Subsequently, child developed mild pleural effusion on the right side. Investigations revealed influenza virus detected on biofires. This was his report. So why I wanted to highlight here is because now also we see in sporadic cases of flu. Here you can see influenza A detected, CT value of 30. This is also very important test, right? RT-PCR test, which has shown is us about this detection of this virus. So influenza A is very dangerous virus. So was diagnosed as an influenza infection with secondary bacterial infection. So let's see what other bacterial infections also common along with the influenza. So with introduction, if you see a century back, almost 1990, 1918, the Spanish influenza pandemic happened. It went until to 2920, and almost 50 million people were died because of this. And India was the focal point of this pandemic in terms of mortality, with deaths between almost 10 to 20 million, which is a huge. And this got because our soldiers were getting coming back to India in after World War One. They were involved there in Europe. So after that also we have seen 3 pandemics of influenza. That is, I think in 1956 Asian flu, then in later years 1978 something like Hong Kong flu, then happened 2009, which came as a pandemic of swine flu, which came as a California strain. So, and after that also we see sporadic case of influenza occur throughout the year. Uh, and this happens because of 2 important environmental factors like temperature and humidity. Very, very important, because the temperature 5 degrees is very, very good for this influenza virus to grow and cause the impact. And of course, humidity, which is there in India, is also very, very important. After 30-degree, this usually influenza will not cause any problem. It gets damaged, but the problem still this problem is there in Indian continent, which is tropical country. So what are the important what is the causes of this causing in India is they say is humidity. And of course, what we have observed is the diurnal humidity, which is very, very important in the this perspective, as well as the possible household exposure because of because of high populated country like India, and as well as in China. India have identified three major patterns. So we have Srinagar, which comes into 30 knots, and rest of the it comes in a tropical country. So in temperate part, like northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. So India comes maximum part comes into the southern hemisphere part. So northern hemisphere is mainly Jammu Kashmir, Srinagar, and that area. So in those area, it is mainly seen in January to April, or you can say from November to April in winter season. In southern part of India, like Chennai and Kanchipuram, because rainy season starts in mostly in October, November, and December, and that time in Chennai we see a lot of cases in that particular and in throughout the India it is mainly the rainy season, and second most important season is sometimes winter season. Also we see a lot of influenza cases like epidemic. So the period of if you see the range of, I would say, the incubation period is 1 to 2 days with a range of 1 to 4 days maximum, and the transmissibility, or I would say the viral shedding happens up to 5 days from the disease in adults. And in children, that is very important point, that in children it can go up to 15 days. So children are the most important source of infection which can transmit to the others. So transmission of virus happens with the large droplet. This is very important. So what three influenza viruses are there, like A, B, and C, which belongs to Orthomyxoviridae family and are envelope negative strand RNA viruses. The most important factor for causing the damage is nothing but the two glycoprotein, surface glyco envelope glycoprotein, that is hemagglutinin and neuraminidase, play a critical role in pathogenesis, as well as it is the main target for neutralizing antibody against the viruses. So if influenza A virus has only two components, that is hemagglutinin and neuraminidase subtypes, and they are described by letter and number like H1, H16 known till date, plus N1 and N9, for example. The pandemic which happened in 2009 is denoted as A, that is influenza A, California, because it has isolated first from the California. Into the lineage number is 04 in the year 2009, and it found to have from the avian, or would you say from the swine origin. So that's why it is called as swine flu. And H1N1 because it has the component of H1, that is hemagglutinin 1, and N, that is neuraminidase 1. So if you see the pathogenesis, there are two types of influenza viruses present in environment. One is avian influenza viruses, which preferentially bind to 2,3 linked sialic acid, which is present on alveolar type 2 cells and ocular, which is dangerous, which goes directly and causes lower respiratory tract infection. While human viruses bind to only 2 and 6 linked sialic acid present in upper respiratory tract. This is important, so I thought I'll mention in my slides. So why it is important? The reason is, if a patient has got, or a child has got human virus only, then it will be only in your nasopharynx. It will not go maximum, most of the time it will not go until unless you have some background issues like chronic issues like kidney diseases or liver disease or immunodeficiency. Then only it can go into the lung and it can cause lower respiratory. Otherwise, it's mostly upper respiratory tract. So these human viruses are important source of transmission, and that is the reason children are in school age. It is very much transmissible. Either or both, when there is impaired viral clearance or whenever there is exaggerated host immune response, can cause severity of illness in that particular person. So similar as a COVID. So either your immunity is weak, which is not clearing a viral load in COVID, or either after 7 to 8 days when your immune system get exaggerated, it gives exaggerated immune response, you get problem. When your immunity is low, the viral clearance is low, then you get problem. So all viruses acts like this. So it is the important thing. Then there is very important point to be noted in all these viruses is antigenic shift and antigenic drift. So what is antigenic shift? Shift is very, very important because it causes it causes some sudden genetic resortment which happens, and there is a completely changed segment of currently circulating human viruses, and this is called as antigenic shift. So there is completely, so either H1N1 it becomes H2N3 or something like that. And this phenomena occurs only in influenza A. It never happens in influenza B or influenza C. I don't know what is the reason for that, but it happens only in influenza A. And drift, it doesn't, it causes little bit of changes in mutation, but it doesn't cause complete new creation of the novel influenza. What are the clinical manifestation with which present? So almost 50%, as any virus, it can be asymptomatic. Symptoms are high fever, coryza, cough, headache, prostration, and malaise, which persist for 7 to 10 days. Fatigue associated with this illness takes weeks to resolve, like any virus. Elderly, children, pregnant women, and those with chronic condition like asthma, hematological disorder, neurological disorder, metabolic disorder, or any congenital heart disorder and immune compromise, they get more severe disease. Secondary bacteria, this is very, very important, which my case was initial 7 days, it was just influenza A virus. But again, after, so when the defermences start, when the child child is improving, in that period, if suppose there is a fever coming again, then you have to think about something like secondary bacterial infection that can cause because of post influenza. And along with 32% patient with viral pneumonia can develop concomitant bacterial pneumonia, which is clinically challenging to do so. But only main factor is initial fever, then no fever, and sudden deterioration in a child. Think about secondary bacterial infection. 3 to 5% children suffer from influenza. They have association of acute otitis media annually. This is very, very important. And which are the most important bacteria which can cause secondary bacterial infection is streptococcus, then H influenza, B, and of course your staphylococcus. But they say whenever there is influenza A virus, you have to think about it is more prone for staphylococcal infection. So you have to give anti-staph coverage for the children if they become sick. So let's see what are the statistics says about the every year influenza cases and what it causes devastation in all over the world. It has been estimated that the influenza causes almost 2,90,000 to almost 6,50,000 respiratory deaths annually worldwide because of influenza. It's a silent trigger for reaching effects. Worldwide influenza result 3 to 5 million cases which are severe in illness. If you see the influenza attack rate in non-vaccinated children, it's almost estimated to 20 to 30%, and approximately more than 2 billion cases die from influenza around the world. If you see the economic burden of influenza, there is microeconomic cost as well as macro. In microeconomics, it is mainly on that particular house. So because of that, unnecessary over-the-counter drugs, unnecessary lab tests, imaging, doctor's visit, emergency departmental visit, and of course hospitalization, and so then sometimes intensive care unit also. And because of that, there is so much of loss of productivity, absenteeism from the school, and of course years of life loss. And because of this, there is parents, because they are not attending their offices and their jobs, there is a decrease in GDP losses because of healthcare system is disrupted, lot of burden of healthcare on the healthcare, and that can cause macroeconomic cost also. Very, very important. Why children are important for influenza? The important role of any child. Now also we are talking about corona. The children are the most silent transmitter of the diseases. Similar way in influenza also, that the same thing happens. So the children, those preschool age or school age going children, they can transmit to their colleagues, they can transmit to the elders, and of course the siblings which are at home. And they, when they go play outside, they can transmit to the other children also. So flu burden in school going children, if you see the annual attack rate, most of them exceed more than 30% during that outbreak. And because of that, almost 3 days of fever, 5 days of absenteeism from the school. And if you see the, because of this, almost 73% parents with the children age 3 to 6 years have absenteeism from their work. And after 7 years, the absenteeism is less as compared to the children less than 5 years. Influenza is underreported, mind it. This is surveillance study which is done in abroad, and Polling and at all, what they have what they have observed is almost 0.9% cases in your OPD per day are because of influenza. They have just, what they have significantly found is only 28% of hospitalization and 17% outpatient visit by children with lab confirmed influenza. This is very, very important, because only lab confirmed is only 28% hospitalized and 17. Rest of the children who are getting infected, as I already shown you, they are mostly because most of the time they are either asymptomatic 50%, or when they have little bit of symptom, we don't do RT-PCR for the children until unless they are sick, or they need to be hospitalized. So even in hospitalized children, 28% is huge. Almost 17%, those who are lab confirmed, is huge. So think about the cases which are not reported. So it is under recognized. This is a very important global burden, influenza. This included all over the world, and it is done in Dr. Harish Nair from India also was included in his study. And what they have found, the annual influenza association for hospitalization in children is almost 8,70,000. Less than 1 year is 3.74, and less than 6 months is 2.28. 2.28. I mean, 2,28,000. So if you see, the 10% of respiratory admission in school age is from the influenza, and they are more commonly seen in the developing countries as compared to the developed countries. The reason being is because of overpopulation, as well as poor socioeconomic strata more in developing countries. And of course, the environmental pollution is another important factor. And what this study study in Lancet published in 2011 says that almost 28,000 to 1 lakh deaths in 2008 happened in 99% in developing countries. So why it is important? Because the higher attack rate among the preschool children and school age children this is very important, because attack rates may exceed 40% in preschool children and 30% in school age children. So why it is important? Because they are the most important transmission factor for the other siblings, as well as the elderly people or other people in home as well as in school. So this study has depicted in BMC infectious disease, what it has depicted is, if you see the all types of influenza in adult is compared to the children is less. The adult transmission of disease is only 3.5% if you take all influenza, as compared to the children where it is 15.20, the natural attack rate. So it is high, and that is why it is much needed to vaccinate the children as well as the elders also, to protect them. So if you see the impact of influenza in children, there is so much of less than 6 month outpatient visit, as well as unnecessary antibiotic uses are more in 6 to 12 months as compared to any other age group. And excess in hospitalization also. If you see, the influenza contributes to almost, as I already said, 3 days of fever and 5 days of school absenteeism, and it causes almost 104 per 10,000 hospitalization in less than 6 months, again 50%, 50 in 6 to 12, which is huge. So it is time for the important vaccination for the children. Those who are unvaccinated children have considerably higher exposure risk than and then as compared to the adult. As I already mentioned, it is almost 15.2% as compared to the adults, those who are unvaccinated. In that, influenza is 12.2%, which is little dangerous as compared to influenza B. So what are the impacts of the vaccination? So we have talked about what are the attack rate, what it can happen if you don't vaccinate them, if you don't care about them. But if you vaccinate them in preschool, what impact it can happen, it can occur on the society as whole. There is a, of course, reduction in influenza related morbidity, almost 83% IPDs, acute otitis media of 36%, upper respiratory tract like pharyngitis group almost 33%, and lower respiratory tract infection is almost 22%. So these studies confirm the effectiveness of influenza vaccination in preschool children. There is direct as well as indirect benefit of vaccination also, as missed school days, less antibiotic uses, maternal work absenteeism from the work, as well as paternal work abstinence. So this is very, very important as a GDP, as a as a country to go ahead in a GDP and a progression. It is much needed vaccination as compared to any other vaccines. So this is beautiful study done in Japan. What happened in Japan? So from 1950 till 1962, there was no vaccination given. Influenza vaccination was not given in Japanese children, and almost there was one death in a school, in 420 school children, one death was prevented from every 420 school children vaccinated after giving the vaccination. So from 1950 to 1962, the death rate, excess death rate was seen when as compared to the after introduction of 1962, they introduced the vaccination and it was made compulsory. Drastically, their mortality has decreased over the period. But what happened in 1987, the government had issued that almost declined by 50%. So government said now it is up to parents to decide whether they want to get vaccinated for their children or not. Again, there is a increase in death rates, started increasing in death rates in in a children in Japanese preschool children. So this is very, very important study, shows that after vaccination the death rate has decreased. After making it non-compulsory, again the death rate due to influenza has increased in Japanese children. So influenza leads to antibiotic prescription, as I said, because we are worried common bacterial co-infection and secondary infection following influenza can happen. But when child comes to your OPD, high grade fever, there is a coryza, irritability, we tend to think about, the child might have land up in a problem. So most, not all, but most of the time, general practitioner, they give antibiotic in first go, and because of that, unnecessary antibiotic uses are overused, and because of that, there is an antimicrobial resistance also found. So for every 100 children, almost 10 to 30% excess number of courses of antibiotics occurred during influenza season. And this is well known fact, not only in India but in USA also, except UK, most of the other countries, there is a rampant use of antibiotic when there is a so this is studies done in USA only. The maximum antibiotic uses has happened in USA in that period, and this is well published study that whenever there is influenza season, doctors tend to give a lot of antibiotic prescription in view of because of high fever and child may deteriorate in future. So what concludes is all these studies and all my talk is children at increased risk of serious complication and play an important role in transmission of in the disease in community. They are silent transmitters. Children have highest influenza attack rate. That attack rate may exceed 40% in school children and 30% in school age children during influenza epidemic. Influenza incidence in less than 5 years is almost 3 times higher in developing countries as compared to the developed countries. And unvaccinated children have considerably higher exposure risk as compared to the other counterparts as well as adults, almost 4 times. Influenza leads to antibiotic prescription, and of course almost 10 to 30% excess number of courses of antibiotic occurred during the influenza season. Vaccination is the most effective way to prevent influenza and the potential severe complication. So this is until now we just talk about the common things about the influenza and this. So there are drugs which are available in the for the treatment, as all of us know that oseltamivir, which is very commonest drug used via rampantly in 2009 and 2009 era. And there is this basically act on neuraminidase glycoprotein, and it reduces the virus burden. There is one more drug, the name is zanamivir, that is given in inhalation but not available in India. So we'll not talk about that. So what influenza spread occurs in seasonal patterns. As I already mentioned, in India there is no such season, but we take it as a southern hemisphere vaccination in our India, as compared to the Srinagar and this area, it is mainly in northern hemisphere. So influenza activity peak in November and March in northern hemisphere, and it is exactly mirror image of the southern hemisphere, that is in Australia and of course the South Africa and South American countries. And in India it is around year around, maybe because of humidity, and we have 3 different climatic seasons, like um, we have winter as well as we have rainy season also. So influenza vaccination as per zones. So WHO has divided countries into various influenza vaccination zone, which is evidence-based resource to provide practical recommendation to the countries situated in tropics and subtropics. So based on that, so India is in a tropical Asian country, a tropical Asian country. So based on WHO recommendation, the southern hemisphere vaccine is ideal vaccine for India based on influenza vaccination zone. So we should use the southern one. But influenza vaccination in India, when to vaccinate, where? So in Maharashtra, it is mainly the rainy season and your winter. So if you vaccinate earlier, like because it's last only for 5 to 6 months. So if you vaccinate the children in around month of April, May, and June, they will get properly 2 doses, and they will get properly immunized for the season coming in July to September month, that is rainy season. If you are in a northern part, again July to September, but if you are in Jammu Kashmir, it is December to April, as well as in Chennai, because the rainy season starts in Chennai almost in October, December. So if you vaccinate this area in that particular area, they will get immune to that particular disease in October to December. So majority of states across India have peak influenza activity during southern hemisphere season, and this vaccine is ideal vaccine bearing few states like Jammu Kashmir, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. Why does appropriate vaccination timing matter? Because appropriate timing of vaccination is very important consideration in effort to improve vaccine effectiveness as titers wane over the period of time. Hence, it is ideal to vaccinate closer to the season. So vaccines do not save lives, but vaccination do. Thank you very much. With this, I finish my talk. If anybody wants to ask anything, please you can unmute and ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sagar. It was really a very insightful session. I think, as I said, that we know influenza for almost a century now. You really took us through that journey of the century, how we have evolved with this influenza disease, and how do we really look into what is the right thing for us to do at the moment. So, from the general to the specific version is what actually we deduced from your talk, and it was really insightful to understand. Plus, the case study which you shared, which was very recent case study, I think we really need to be mindful that the disease can really show its ugly head at any given point of time, and hence cater the vaccine preventable solution much available with us. In the best interest, I may just open the forum for doctors. If you all have any questions, please feel free to ask Dr. Sagar.
Before anybody asks, I will mention that all of us as a doctors also should take vaccination every year. It is very important. There is once I heard somewhere, I read somewhere, Dr. Amol Annadate was telling that this Bohra community this is the only community has suffered less in COVID area. The reason they have given is because this community, they have given everyone influenza vaccination to everyone in that Bohra community. So that is what I recently heard from somebody. I think Dr. Amol Annadate, very well known personality in Maharashtra. So from him I heard about this, that this community, what he has done, so they are coming with the studies about this. So whenever those who have received this vaccine, they have got less infected with this disease. So there is a question by Dr. Chitra Kulkarni ma'am, that whether 0.25 or 0.5, there is a dilemma over it. So Dr. Pooja Bangale will answer about this.
Okay, sure. So, doctor, just to prime about this 0.25 and 0.5, I think in the current era, possibly just let me tell you how is this origin and how we actually came with this 0.25 and 0.5. So, of lately, since we wanted to bring this brand, so this is Flu Quadri is a US manufactured product, and they manufactured always two doses, 0.25 and 0.5. Now, today we speak about universal dosage of zero point 0.5, that the globe is shifting. Possibly, we completely agree and we do not deny that, yes, it is maybe the need and it may be kind of progressive change. It cannot be something which we really endorse upon sudden. Because what is going to happen is possibly, just to tell you, doctors, that when we brought two doses with the intent that DCGI had requested us to do the studies, because US had its own manufacturing capacity of two doses, and that was a request catered by DCGI, which Sanofi fulfilled. And likewise, we got both the dosages in India approved in their own domains with good immunogenic response for the respective age groups which they were indicated for or recommended for. Now, this was the story which was ongoing, and now suddenly it is coming up like, yes, we need to really get into a unified version of zero point 0.5, and it is a global it is a universal dosage policy. So doctors, we are not really denying it, but please understand one thing: at this point of time, though this is a US manufactured product, US itself has got its own approval for 6 months onward for 0.5. But still, in the best interest of catering the population or demand of the population, or I would say, in other words, catering the supply and demand ratio, US still manufactures both the capacities like 0.25 as well as 0.5. So in the upcoming time, as I said, this is very progressive, and as we really would be in that progressive era, to not really surpass or take off that protection which may be rendered to an adult age group. Because if we see, we have studies in place, like one of the classical study that we have is the Sharad Agarkhedkar et al. Study, which talks about the immunogenic response and the seroconversion rates which are well established with 0.25 dosage. So if we have to really see, is there any harm in giving for that less than 3 years for 0.25? There is no harm. I mean, there could be no reason apart from a logistic convenience to really use 0.5 as a universal dosage. But as Dr. Sagar, you mentioned, right now it is ardent for each one of us to take influenza vaccine. One example was the Bohra community itself. Possibly, if those dosages of 0.5, if they could be parked to a population much needing it, and if we could really cater the pediatric dosage in its own format, possibly. And as we progress, when all the manufacturers really evolve to get into that unified dosage, it's just a transition process. It's nothing that we say that we differ in your thought process, but it is not giving you anything apart from the logistic convenience with any kind of added benefit. More so, also IAP recommendation also talks, just to throw some little light on it, which again we are fairly with, but a little disclaimer again that they mention in little small italics that till the time all the companies get their respective approvals, they can follow the manufacturer's age recommendations, which means they too abide by the sense that yes, we have proven our studies in place, which is why we are in India. So that's the only best answer I can give for 0.25 and zero point 0.5. And till the time I think we can really have this complete shift of the globe to get to that universal dosage system, we can really help the community to get more and more people vaccinated in that regards. So that's the only best interest of Sanofi, because if US really got this approval for zero point 0.5 at 6 months onwards, they could have really thought it as a easy convenience and stopped manufacturing 0.25. It is only that we had to do some, as per the mathematical modelings that they really showcased, that the supply and demand ratio would be catered then. So that was the only thought process.
So what do you recommend now, and what does your inserts says? Posology.
So posology would say that we would recommend less than 3 years with 0.5 and about 3 years onwards with less than 3 years is 0.25 and about 3 years will be 0.5, sir.
How many doses below 2 years?
So less than 9 years, if you are giving, like from 6 months to 8 years, you give 2 doses as for the first priming, and above 9 years, if you're giving, then it's only 1 dose in the respective age groups.
And suppose anyone has taken COVID vaccine, so he wants to take influenza. So what is the interval on whether it is advisable to take?
So as per now, the government bodies have mentioned, or the authorities have mentioned, that a minimum gap of 14 days is advisable to be maintained between COVID and influenza. So you can either do it as a sandwich dosage if you have 2 doses aligned, and in between if you want to take influenza, considering the seasonality being right at this point of time, or maybe even if those who have already completed COVID doses, possibly following that. But a minimum of 14 days gap should be maintained between both the vaccines.
Does it interfere with the seroconversion for COVID?
Not so noticed as such, but I mean, not even that we may be having any studies also, but this is the best by the governing bodies at the moment. Yeah. I think there are a couple of questions. If I may just ask, how is the COVID impact on annual flu epidemic in India or US? Dr. Sagar, if you want to take that.
What is the question?
How is the COVID impact on annual flu epidemic in India or US?
So there is, I don't know, but we are less recognizing the cases as per now, because we are more into the into the COVID and COVID. So any cases which are coming to us now, we are thinking about mainly about the COVID only. So we really don't know about the annual flu epidemic in India and US. Nobody has studied regarding that.
Sagar, in your case, what you stated, na, cough cold only for 3-4 days first. Fever came after 4 days. So why is that viral not started with fever? You should start with fever high grade, I think so.
Yes, but here there was no fever, only cold and cough, and then fever started. So it could be I would say asymptomatic initially, just like coryza, but later on it got secondary bacterial infection.
I think there's a comment made by Dr. Sanjeevni regarding flu vaccination. Her whole family was vaccinated last June. Out of 8, 4 were infected with COVID. So, any thoughts, Dr. Sagar?
No, I just mentioned this can happen. So everywhere
Yes.
there is a plus and minus. So that's what one observation they have mentioned in one of the talk which I have heard, that this Bora community has suffered a less as compared to any other. So they have given lot of everybody, they have given the flu vaccine. At least we can be sure that we have given flu vaccine, so we are a little bit of sure, because I forgot to mention that this vaccination is almost 60% give effective in adults and 80 to 85% effective in children. So that is very, very important. It's not like less than 50. So 60% in adults and 80 to 85% in children, which can prevent the disease.
Sagar, do you mean to say flu vaccination has given cross protection against COVID to Bora community?
No, 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 no. I mean, I didn't mean that. It's just observation study. Maybe I don't know what is the conclusion. There is no conclusion because this is an observation.
Okay.
At least we are sure that we have taken some vaccine which is vaccine preventable disease which comes like a COVID. So the similar symptoms, similar presentation. Here also we get a lot of body pain and can go up to 3 to 4 weeks also in influenza infection also. So at least we are sure that we are protected against influenza. That is what I would say.
Sagar, what are the chances of getting this flu and COVID at once, right? Both infection.
Chances
are there.
Yes, chances are there. There is no study as such, but chances are there, sir.
But definite symptomatology, COVID doesn't have the rhinorrhea, and that part is very less. Rather,
Yes.
we know, right? Rather,
Yes.
they present with the basic fever and GIT non-respiratory symptoms in fatigue are quite more. Right now, we are
Yes,
saying,
but
MIC.
right now we are seeing a lot of children with throat irritation, fever, but no myalgia. They don't have myalgia as such, but they are coming.
This myalgia, other thing, rhinorrhea, and sudden onset of high fever is more with the COVID, not with this. That flu is totally almost, they have that redness of eyes and other thing. I'm talking about the active infection, right?
Yes.
MIC is something different.
Different.
Right now I have the patient having classical like Kawasaki, but it's turned out to be MIC. Right?
Yes.
With COVID antibody is strongly positive.
To add, Doctor, what Jay said, to add, whether we are able to differentiate clinically between influenza and COVID.
No, it is difficult.
No, it is difficult, but suppose patient had fever for 3-4 days and rhinorrhea, that is very typical of, we say that the watery discharge is a very common with the
influenza.
Influenza only, not with the COVID. That is very sure. Right.
COVID nowadays we are seeing most of them are asymptomatic. They will get hardly one or two episodes of fever and some irritability in throat. But as sir mentioned, there is less with coryza, very, very less as compared to influenza. They will have proper coryza, like cold, cough, and then fever, high grade fever also.
Suppose you observe the patient of influenza, what is the multi-systemic, this is the presentation of symptoms. Classical cough, cold, diarrhea, which is very common with the flu, right?
Yes.
Rather, with what you see, agar respiratory hai, they will get mainly respiratory symptoms. Suppose they have the GIT, so they will have the GIT symptom more.
Yes.
And very classical of flu vaccine, flu infection, we will get all symptoms, right? All multi-system. Suppose this is upset diarrhea, other thing, watery, then definitely ye to barabar, ye to flu hai.
So, doctor, if I may just add, maybe recently I came across a few studies, and we do not have any RCT data which strongly would recommend about the impact of COVID and influenza, what we are classically talking around. But more so, what it has shown that in one or two observational studies or assessed studies that flu vaccine lessens COVID-19 symptoms in children. And influenza vaccination's important role in protecting the elderly, which is a group that is particularly vulnerable for COVID-19. So as influenza vaccination will generate benefit, which I mean will greatly benefit the management of COVID virus pandemic. So what it will exactly do is facilitating differential diagnosis and overload and avoiding overload of the healthcare system. So as we would be in that radar or in that fight of, understanding between what is the exact diagnosis of the patient, possibly at least vaccinating the patient for influenza will help us at least save on catering that yes, it is already one one diagnosis is already catered and we need to really look into the other domain. And there's one more question from Dr. Chitra to you, Dr. Sagar. It says that you have recommended family vaccination by pediatrician. What about legal problems if anaphylaxis happen to adults?
Hemant Gangulia sir. Gangulia sir, please.
As far as possible, this as a pediatrician, we should always restrict to below 18 years. And above 18 years, adult population is there. We can advise them, but then and if you are able to manage the anaphylactic reaction, it's okay. But then again, it is the domain of the physician. So better is to avoid if you know that it can cause anaphylaxis. But your anaphylaxis as such is very rare, I think so. If you're able to handle it, it's okay. But then it's a very rare. But then if it is because it is 100% for that person. So then that probably we should not go in the domain of other specialty, I feel so. So it's better to avoid. But then it's very rare. So we can.
Gangulia sir, I have to say something.
Yes.
Right now, due to lockdown, all these our adults have become adult only. So even suppose you get a 14, 15-year-old, I got a child yesterday, I was weighing 98 kg, right? So almost उसका तो एयरवे एनाप्लेक्स होगा तो मैनेजमेंट तो अडल्ट जैसे लगेगा. So what you do, आपके क्लिनिक में पूरा अडल्ट का पूरा रेसिडेंशियल किट, लैरिंगोस्कोप, अदर थिंग सब चाहिए. 750,000 वाला सब एम्बुवैक like that. You cannot avoid it. Now our adults are almost like adult or more than adults. Right?
Exactly, Jay. What you said is proper, but then one has to document properly. If anything happens, and if it is documented that you have done all these things, and anything happens, it doesn't matter. You have done the right thing. That is important.
And another thing, I have faced 2 thrice difficult situation. Given a vaccine to the baby, and mother got the vasovagal syncope, right? So in that case, what I'm saying, if you have the clinic, so adult patient, it is not patient, she's mother or father, right?
Yes.
Sometimes rarely you may face a situation, so you need to handle that also, right?
Yes.
In that case, though you're a pediatrician, you should know, you should have some 1 or 2 bed dedicated for we cater adult patient also, because lot of grandfathers and grandmothers are usually there with your kids, right? I have got a convergence to the grandfather, right? Manage karna pada like that, right?
Yes,
like
yes.
that. So right, our field is about the uncertainty, right? It's a thing. Right?
So I think it's about perspective and it's about how we actually see. So I think in the better interest of the community, we can really open that eyes. If Dr. Chitra wanted to know about the legalities which are involved, possibly there are no legalities involved if a pediatrician can vaccinate any adult. So for that matter, as per the guidelines established or endorsed in the CDC, any licensed and registered medical practitioner can vaccinate. And more so, even an ANM, which is an auxiliary nurse midwifery, as stated in the abroad or Western countries, can vaccinate in public health facility too. Now, as rightly pointed by each one of you, possibly that yes, anaphylaxis is a little critical concern, but I think it is one of those rarest cases which we may have seen in our lifetime. And more so as the world is looking, because why we really want to showcase this aspect is because, see, for a parent who is coming to you, you best know about vaccination. They endorse only one fact, is that pediatricians are the whole soul owners of this vaccination drive. किसको पता है vaccination के बारे में? It's only pediatrician. Whoever has to, possibly there'll be queries for even adult vaccinations to you. So more so to create an awareness, and I think there are a good number of doctors, senior doctors or senior faculties who are actually talking, endorsing about encouraging this adult vaccination from a pediatric perspective. Also, it's an evolving situation with time. It's not that we mandate it to do, but having said, at least that awareness goes on, and possibly if we are really comfortable, as Dr. Jai mentioned a very classical example of a hefty body like an adolescent looking like an adult, or we require a management like an adult, possibly you will be equipped with that facility at your clinic, and then it really does not stop or should not stop us from really giving or passing over that added benefit, just not to the children who visit, but at least to the community overall who accompanies them. So I think with this, there are no questions in the chat box.
One thing we added, I don't
Yes,
think so.
doctor.
What reference you have given, any registered medical practice, that is the can vaccinate. I don't think so. You can give the reference of that one thing. And
Okay.
secondly, ANM, what you regarding stated AM, I don't think so. It is any references there regarding to that. Of course, in government machinery, they do give the vaccination of field, so they are allowed to do it. But if anything happens, they are equally responsible. The doctor under the supervision is responsible for that. So that will not be difference. And the bottom line is that if nothing happens, it's all is good, because everything you cannot get in the law books. There is not stated in of the law book. If any issue goes to the any Supreme Court, and then whenever the ruling comes, that becomes a precedence law or the judgmental law. So regarding this issue, whatever, it is still that this matter is not existing in any of the court and any of the Supreme Court. So it is a dicey situation. So the bottom line is that if you are doing anything, you have to justify the things what you are doing. And if anything happens, whatever the recommended standard protocols are said, that has to be taken and that has to be followed and documented. So that is the difference. But
That's
this statement,
okay.
probably don't think so. It is any reference that any registered medical practitioner can vaccinate. That is not there. They can give the treatment as per as their curriculum or their existing, they can be given. Because see, this will go on. Because in one of the case where it was against in case of dengue fever, where the blood was given of the other pathy. So then that, but it doesn't have, but in the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act, it mentions the registered medical practitioner can give as a medicine. So that saved that doctor. Anyway, that is our part.
No, doctor, just to add, I have just stolen this statement from Dr. Yevle's presentation, to be very honest with you, because that's what was the adult perspective that he had actually established in his last talk. And I just thought that this was really correlated here, which is why
in one of the president DY party, I also had same, because that time I was talking on then Dr. Yevle and even Upendra Kinzadekar was moderating that session, and I was answering that question. So this issue also came there. So that is the way I explained that.
Sure. Okay. But very valid pointers, because of course we have to be abiding our ethical basis first, safeguarding our professional etiquettes first, and then only doing whatever best stands in our capacity. So, and predominantly documenting everything that we do, which is the best thing. So I think with this, we had a quite intense discussion, just not restrained to influenza, but on the practical aspects too. If there are no other questions, possibly any other questions, if I may just ask, and if no questions, I think we are good to close. I really thank Dr. Sagar once again for a wonderful talk on this topic. It was really a pleasure to have you, and a pleasure to have all of you doctors today. It was really insightful to really deep dive and discuss all around the practical aspects, not just to influenza, but around your clinical practice too. So thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you once again to IAP, without I forget this. So IAP Raigad for organizing and allowing Sanofi to really have this session on their platform. And thank you. I think we're good to close for the day.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful session, Dr. Sagar, very clear messages, and it was influenza revisited. It was very informative. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sanofi, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, all the doctors. Thank you.